everyone, I am Ekta and welcome to Reader Kitab's Authors Talk today again. Very excited to be hosting this today, and we have a very eminent guest who's going to join us today. I'm looking forward for this conversation, and I'm looking forward to talk so much about it because today I'm going to discuss about one of my favorites book and one of my favorite books, and it's such a brilliant opportunity that I'm going to have this conversation with her. I will, in the meanwhile, till Daisy joins in, I will loop in my co-hosts with me. So I see Abhishek has joined in. I'll just send him an invite. I don't know why I'm not able. Just allow me a second. I'll just add Abhishek, and then we will start. Okay. To join in, and in the meanwhile, we will have some chat. Hi, Nuraj.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. How are you?
I'm also.
Hi, Abhishek.
Hi,
Hi,
Abhishek.
hi, Neeraj, hi, Ekta. How are you doing? Happy New
Good,
Year.
good.
Happy
Happy New
New
Year.
Year to everyone.
Yes, a very
Yes,
happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Absolutely. And I hope this new year brings us a lot of reading, uh, responsible reading, let me put it like that. A lot of responsible reading, lot of important reading, and let this new year bring us so much of happiness and, brilliance in our lives. And maybe pick brilliant literature, maybe learn more, maybe expand our horizons, and not be just following, reading goals and get FOMO, and just being doing just for the sake of doing it, but yeah, really cherishing the joy that we have while reading. So yeah, new year to all of you from Reader Kitab and all of us. We'll be waiting for Daisy, who will just join us, and then we will begin. In the meanwhile, I am very excited because I mean, I'm just thinking that I never thought, when I read this book for the first time, I never thought that I'll be getting an opportunity to talk to the person who's kind of reviewed the book and translated the book, and you know so I'm very excited. How about you guys?
Same here. I mean, it is always a dream come true that when you get to talk to the authors that you really like, the ones that you are, are your favorites, and also translation. So this is the very first time probably I'm going to be interacting with the translator of a literary work, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I'm very excited. How about you, Abhishek?
I mean, International Booker Prize. That's it. That's it. I don't have to say anything more. And it's such an honor to be talking to Daisy, and who's the recipient of this prestigious award, and a book that is it's a piece of literature. It's art, I would say. So yeah, I'm very excited. I'm so looking forward to this.
Same here, and I'm just waiting for Daisy to join in. I will just ask if Anurag is there. I think yes, he's there in the audience. Anurag, if you can just drop a note to Daisy that we have started the live and we are waiting for her. That would really be so nice. So I see a lot of people joined in today, and I'm sure everybody is looking forward to this conversation. This book is huge. I mean, this book is huge.
It is huge, and not just in the from the perspective of just the sheer number of pages it has, but it is huge in many other ways as well. And I really must salute the translator. They did really a fantastic job. Daisy has done a fantastic job. And talking about Daisy, she is not just a translator; she is a writer in her own right, and she has written a novel, and she has translated many other South Asian authors as well. And she's a painter, by the way, so I'm very excited to
Yes.
ask her about painting as well.
And do you know she knows more than 13 plus
I mean,
languages? I mean, like,
that's amazing.
what is that? Yeah.
And she's
Um,
been so she's been so vocal about talking about Urdu and Hindi literature and kind of putting it on the pedestal and making a global audience a part of it, the brilliant literature that we have in our country, and which is due to language, which kind of sometimes is not being able to reach the masses. I think she is one of the pioneers in doing that, which is quite exemplary.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more with what you have said. And it's basically translation. I'm sometimes very skeptical about picking up a translation. I'm not very sure. But Ekta, I know that you have read it in Hindi, and I have read it in English, and we could exchange so many things. And it never felt like I was reading it in English language. That was the magic of translation as well. I guess I'm asking all the questions right here. That really shows like I'm very nervous right now also.
Yeah, so someone has done truly amazing job translating such a huge book true to its essence. Absolutely, and the book is just like like Neeraj, you were talking about. The book is not just big in volume, but in its essence, and the message, the layers that the book has is quite. I mean, I have no words because, like you both know, it has always been one of my favorite books and will always be. I think I got into a period of quite numbness, rather, let me put it like that, because I was not able to read anything after I read the Hindi, the original Hindi version of it, and I was like quite numb because I was not able to understand
Understand.
what will kind of supersede this. I didn't want to, I was scared to pick up another book because I was always wondering, will it kind of even meet the expectations that this book has set up for me? So I think it's a brilliant, brilliant piece of literature.
It definitely is, and when I was reading the translation itself, I could actually sense that should I call it a very long epic poem? Like, should I call it a novel?
Yeah.
And like it's many things. Like it's genre bending, but it's also very logical. Also, it's not like it's just for the sake of sounding poetic. So, how was the translator also able to capture all of these things? Is I'm very excited to know.
Yeah, I think it's
Sure.
a
And
profound piece of literature which um, I think is so important if when we want to read different, when we want to read interesting works of literature. I think Tomb of Sand slash Wraith Samadhi is going to stand in that uh, zone, of a very interesting, very different piece of literature. Not just because it's won an award, but in its entirety, I think it is just a phenomenal piece of work.
absolutely. I think Anurag has just messaged that she's joining in few minutes, which is
A great thing.
making me a little nervous as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me put it. And in the meanwhile, before she joins, let me boost a little. So I got a signed copy from Gitanjali
Oh,
Shri.
oh
Oh,
my God.
really? Oh,
So
wow.
I was so happy when I happened to meet her in one of the the sessions that she had. She was here in Bombay, and I think listening to her was sheer delight. And I am looking forward to kind of relive that experience today with Daisy, because I know that whatever, whenever if you're following, all of you, if you're following Daisy's Instagram account, you will see that she posts very random stuff, and those things are so brilliant, those things are sometimes so abstract, you really need an eye to detail and to understand them. But once you get the hang of them, you just kind of, everything is so layered. I mean, her posts are so layered, her stories are so layered. So that is one of my favorite pages on Instagram that I follow, because it is always so amazing to see what she's written, what she's posted, because it always has that art segment blend into it, and it is quite interesting.
And can we pause for a moment and at least appreciate the beauty of the cover
Oh,
here? Like,
absolutely
And
this
gorgeous.
is
both the editions.
art in itself. Like this this is a painting. This is not a cover. This is like a painting, I
Painting.
think.
And this is
Yes.
exactly how I imagine the main character.
Yeah.
This is exactly how, like,
Yes.
oh yes, this makes a lot of sense.
Yes, totally.
Also, I want to announce something here since we are on this platform today. A lot of people messaged me after I put this story that, we are doing this interview. And when I read this book around, I think 2 years back, 1.5, 2 years back, when it just came in, I think a lot of people wrote to me saying that it's a tough book, it's a difficult book, it's a difficult read. It's not so easy to kind of understand what the book talks about. And I always reply to them saying that I definitely agree. It is a difficult read. It is not an easy read because it is not just a read. I mean, you really, this book really demands a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of patience while reading it. So there is a process. I think what I followed was, I was telling both of you guys that I actually read out loud so many pages when I kind of started reading this. So I'm going to reread this book, and starting from the 15th of this month. And so there is a buddy read option available. So if any one of you wants to come up and read with me, it would be so awesome. And I think Daisy is there, so
Already
Yes,
so.
let me not
yes.
continue and talk so many things. I'm really waiting for her to join, so I'll just invite her. Okay, here we go. So definitely nervous. All right, so hi Daisy.
Hello.
Hi.
How are
Hi.
you?
Happy
Hi,
New Year to
how are you?
you.
Yeah.
Happy New
Namaste.
Year.
Here. You can hear me and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
Okay. Great.
yes,
Great.
absolutely. Um, so glad to have you here today. And we were just waiting, and we were chit chatting about the book, and we were like kind of getting nervous that when you're going to join, we are going to have this amazing conversation. So a very warm welcome to you from Reader Kitab reading community and all of us. I have with me, so I am Ekta, and I have with me Neeraj.
Hi. Namaste.
Hi.
And I have with me Abhishek.
Hi, how are you
Hi.
doing?
So yeah, Daisy, thank you for joining us. Are you able to hear us?
Yep. Fine. Everything's good.
Great.
Yeah.
So happy to have you here, and extremely thrilled to be talking to you. And since we were, talking since some time about the book, so I will just quickly introduce Daisy, though she doesn't need any introduction, and I don't think I'm worthy enough to be, or deserving enough to be introducing her. But I just want to put, few things around. So Daisy's been, awarded the International Booker Prize along with Gitanjali Shri for her book Ret Samadhi and Tomb of Sand in 2022. She was also awarded with the Warwick Women's Women's Translation in Literature Prize 2022, and she also won the Dhwani Award recently in 2023. And I'm not naming all the awards and all the merits that she has in her kitty, because then we'll only be doing that today. And just by telling this, that she's been a pioneer and she's been exemplary in taking the Hindi and Urdu literature and the South Asian literature across the globe and putting it on a pedestal. She's played such a brilliant, great role. So we have her with us today. And I think Anurag was just telling me that there was some confusion that happened regarding the time. So we really apologize for that.
Sorry about that. I should
I
have
know that.
calculated it from the Indian time, but I just took it from your poster, which was an hour off for my time zone. So that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, Daisy. So we'll just start, and everybody's waiting to listen to you, and they've heard us enough, so they want us to shut up now. So first things first. Just wanted to ask you that how Ret Samadhi happened, because when we read the book, when we in number of times, so I keep on going to different pages, and just, in between, I feel like reading some pages, and then, again going back to it. There are so many layers to it. The story is so brilliant, the way it is translated is so brilliant. It actually feels, I mean, it's such a tough translation, because I'm also a reader of Hindi language, so I have read it in Hindi, and then, after a few months I read it in English. So I was just wondering, how can somebody translate that in English? And when I read the translation, uh, I was blown away, because it is so brilliant. So, just wanted to put it this way, that, how did Tomb of Sand happen?
You mean, okay, that's a big question. Um, I mean, I think at first I was asked to look at it, because Arunava Singha, the Bangla translator, was talking to Deborah Smith from Tilted Access Press in the UK, and she had read Geetanjali's novel Mai in translation, so she was curious. She heard there was a new book, so I only had read a little bit, and I did a little sample for her, which was actually just 3 or 4 pages to get permission, which was surprisingly hard. Like, I thought, oh, I'll just send her, at the time, surprisingly, because I hadn't read the book, right? So I just was like, oh, I'll just send her a couple of pages, no problem. And that took me, a month or something to translate 5 pages, and she was really pleased, because, even though there were some problems, because, if you've read the Hindi, like, can you imagine trying to nail down exactly what she meant? She has a lot of ambiguity and experimental words and grammar and stuff like that. So she felt like I had gotten the gist of it, and she was pleased, so she gave me permission. So then I had to create a sample, which for publishers, and that's about 25 pages. So again, it was surprisingly difficult. I had read a lot more of the book at that point. I guess I had finished it by that point, but it was still surprised me how difficult it was, because when you're reading something without translating it, it's a very different process, like you don't have to understand every single thing. And in fact, we train ourselves as readers to just keep going. I don't know that word, so what? Like, you don't sit there with the dictionary reading a book. So that was extremely difficult. And then, of course, doing the actual translation was sometimes I just thought, I can't do this. Like, this is, what am I doing here? And I would have to ask her so many questions over email. Like, I must have asked her hundreds and hundreds of questions, and sometimes you have to keep going back over and over and over and over again. Because she doesn't know how to explain it either, honestly. Like, because she's like, she's inspired, the message comes from above or whatever, and it flows out of her. But it's not an analytical process, right? Like, writing a novel is not an analytical process. So I felt guilty too, like making her nail down, like, well, what do you mean? Like, did the wind flow or blow, or that kind of thing? She's like, I don't know, right? So yeah, it was just really, really hard. And I think at a certain point, though, we came to an agreement that she wanted me to play with language the way that she had. Like, she didn't want it to be literal, and and that's obviously better that way. So that's, I think, when I was able to really put the spirit into it. And so now I have this kind of philosophy. I'm actually translating another one of her books right now, which is not as difficult. It's Hamara Shaher Usparas. So it's 25 years old, and just, it's still her, but it's like not as crazy as Reid Samadhi. And so but I have this like philosophy. I was thinking today, how American religious fundamentalists, they wear these baseball caps that say WWJD, what would Jesus do? So I'm WWGD, like, what would You totally do. If she were me, and she was translating, what would she do? And so it's like not the same as what you'd think the translation is, sitting with the dictionary, blah, 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 right? Like I have to also get inspired. And like if some weird thing starts happening with the language or some pun or something, I just put it in there, even if she didn't have it. If it wasn't there in the Hindi, because I'm losing puns all the way. Like you can't bring all the puns. So it's called compensation in a way, like in translation, when you compensate, like I'm losing this pun, but I'll put in another one right over here. And so if you were looking at the two texts, you'll see that I do that a lot. Like I can't get this one, but I'm going to put in my own down here, and then we'll make up for it. We'll get the tone, the playful tone.
Oh my God. Listening from you that it was such a Herculean task, I'm sure you would understand how it would have hit readers so much that when I just started reading Great Samadhi, I was kind of I used to take a lot of pauses. It took me 3.5 months to finish Great Samadhi to read. Though it is such a small, I mean, in terms of the number of pages, it is only 360 odd pages. And I used to read out loud lot of chapters, just to get the feel of those voices, those jingles. And similar thing happened when I was reading the English translation of it. So I mean, thank you. It is definitely going to be one of my favorite books ever I have read, and it has set the bar so up that after reading the book, I was just not able to pick up any other book, because I was not sure whether any book would ever be able to kind of reach
Live
this
up to
kind of level up. It is so brilliant, Daisy, and thank you for joining us. We are so happy to have you here today.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, after I translated it, I just couldn't translate for a long time, like, because I didn't feel like in a way I felt like I didn't know anything anymore. Like it just sort of emptied me out, and like nothing was normal, and no grammar was normal, and I just felt like I don't know Hindi, and I don't know how to translate, and I'm giving up. It took a while for the book to come out too, because of COVID. So I was just kind of on this hiatus. And then nobody read it for like 9 months. It was out in the UK for 9 months, and nobody read it, except for our husbands. And then suddenly we were longlisted. So it was very weird transition.
So, interestingly, reading English also, I was not very sure about whether I do know English anymore, because the sentences are all over the places, and I'm like, so one of the questions I was also wondering about is, like, at one point of time in the novel Tomb of Sand, there is this character that talks about translation in general and also translating Dhwani in particular. Right, and we do have in Indian School of Poetics, at least, the concept of Dhwani, which goes much beyond the rupakas, and which goes much beyond the metaphors and similes and everything. So, how easy and difficult was it for you? Because in the translator's note also, you do mention translating Dhwani, the essence and the reverberations of the words, and not exactly what they mean. So I was just kind of wondering how difficult or easy was it? I mean, obviously it was, I guess, difficult, but how was the process?
Well, that's funny. I think, that passage about translation is funny, because she talks about it from the author's perspective, where things become like all mixed up, and one thing becomes totally different, and so on. So, but the Dhwani I liked when she brought it up, because it reminds us that, again, a lot of people think of translation as this word for word transfer from one language to another, and they're thinking about the words that's sitting on the page. And what I think that people forget is that words have these clouds of meaning, so they're not just that one thing that with this one meaning, or even 5 meanings. There's all this, there's other stuff hovering around it that's intangible. And so the Dhwani is like what helps me think of how to capture that. So when I'm having trouble with a passage, I'll often just close my eyes and think, what is she seeing? What is she describing? What is this person doing? And sometimes I can't answer the question, but I try to like imagine the sight or the sound instead of just going with this word and saying, well, the dictionary says this means wiggle, but I don't think that a train can wiggle, like that kind of thing. Like you think, why did she use that word? What is she seeing? What is she thinking? And so Dhwani is like, is not, not in the strict poetic sense, but just the idea that, that there's a vibe, like, because Dhwani actually is, you could translate as vibe too, right? So there's a vibe, and you have to figure out what the vibe is, and that's part of translation. It's not just just literalism, and so that book really pushed me into that space in terms of translation.
Wow. And I believe Ekta also has a follow-up question for that. Ekta, do you remember you said that, while reading it, you kind of
Yeah.
could hear the background music. So Ekta, why don't you ask the question?
So I was just wondering, where while I was reading Great Samadhi and then Tomb of Sand, it was always as if I felt there was some music playing in the background, and there was some classical rendition going on, which was so powerful that the words just swayed around it, and at one point of time, the words, the language becomes so overwhelming that that music just suddenly stops, and there is a whole silence around you, and those words just flow. It is an experience reading Tomb of Sand and Red Samadhi. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so were you listening to some music while you were writing the book, or were you kind of thinking about something when you were just kind of translating things? Because all those words are so difficult to bring exactly in English, and there is no literal translation to it available.
Right, right. Well, yeah, music I think is important. She uses a lot of um onomatopoeia, like words that sound like
Yes,
things. Um
yes,
and she's interested in the way words sound, um and the musicality of words. And she obviously likes music too, because you see there she references musical things frequently, like that very
yes.
odd passage where about like somebody's taking uttering a note or something like that, and you're out buying subsidies, and then you just keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
So she's obviously very interested in music. I always listen to music when I'm translating. Like it's better than silence. It like sort of helps me keep flowing. Like it's really important for me with translation to keep a flow going, because it can be a choppy process. Like you get stuck on a certain word and you like discuss it with your colleagues, and you can sort of like keep digging deep into this one word and then lose the rest of the text. So it's really important to be able to keep pulling back and thinking about flow and thinking about how it moves. So I usually I don't like music that's going up and down a lot when I'm like certain kinds of classical music, like medieval choral music or sitar music is good. Um, um, Kirana Luwalia, I like her. She keeps things kind of at an even pace. Um, that kind of thing.
It's
Amazing.
all it's almost like an ASMR for the literary world,
Yeah.
the words that are used in this book, you know. I just wanted to know, like, since the International Booker Prize, what do you think is the importance of translated literature, and how much of this onus rests on the translator?
Yeah, I think that translated literature is important for connecting people and cultures and ideas. it keeps us from being provincial. You know, we if you read, because when you read a translated book, it wasn't written for you. Like, that's almost a given. It wasn't written for you. And so to me, it's sort of like eavesdropping. Like, you get to hear something that you weren't meant to hear, or see something that you weren't meant to. Not that anyone was trying to keep you out of it, but they weren't thinking about you. And with English, this is particularly vital because it's not, obviously India isn't like this, but a lot of the English-speaking world is very, very monolingual. And they are just they become, you know, monolingual English speakers are like very insular, you know, they forget that there are other ways of thinking and viewing the world, and there's so much available to them that they don't feel like, oh, I don't have enough novels to read. Like, there's always more than enough being written all around the world. And they can even, you know, like a lot of Indian literature that's written in English that's published globally, not necessarily the domestic market, but the international market, is also written for these insular people. Like, it helps them, you know, like there's a lot too, in my opinion, too much extra explanation of, you know, what people are eating and what they're listening to, and it like becomes kind of a textbook. So what I feel like is translation is really vital in opening people's minds and eyes, and creating empathy, and finding new ways to consider what is beautiful. I feel like aesthetics can be narrow-minded and bigoted like any other form of discernment, and so reading translation helps us think about different ways to consider what is beautiful or what is frightening or anything like that. The onus doesn't necessarily lie on the translator. The onus actually lies more on publishers, because they're the ones that produce the works, you know. So like, there can be many wonderful translators sitting around with lots and lots of manuscripts, but the publishers have to bring them out and have to understand how to market them. A lot of publishers, and this is true in India and in the US and in the UK, do not know how to market translations. Like, I would love it if bookstores, this isn't the publisher's fault, but like bookstores, for example, if they had, you know, a translation section.
Absolutely.
And like, instead of just sticking it all in there, so you have to actually look for it, like it's kind of hard to find. Or like a translation table, you know, display in their bookstore.
Absolutely.
Or like, you could, wouldn't it be great if you could go into a bookstore and say, like, I want an Arunava Singha translation, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. You can't do that. You can't search by the translator. So, so I think there needs to be a lot more awareness of how to market and how to reach audiences. And people are scared of translation. Like, they're scared of reading translations. And there's also this misconception that translations are sort of counterfeits, you know, like, or like bad copies, not the real thing, you know. So like, the original text is the Bible. Like, that's how the way people talk about it. Like, I read this, but I don't know if I got the essence, because it's a translation. And you think, well, you don't know what the essence is, for one thing. And it's also not the Bible. It's not the Gita, okay? Like, it's a novel, right? And if you liked reading this translation, that means it was a good translation.
Absolutely.
Right? That's all you need to know. You don't, it's not like the translators sometimes are viewed with great suspicion, like we're trying to pull one over on the audience, or like, you know, or we're somehow obstructing your view of the literary work, when actually, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't be able to read it at all.
Absolutely.
Not you, like, because you're able to read both versions. But but that's not what we're doing. We're actually giving it to you, not keeping it from you.
I feel like I enjoy reading translated works, and some of my favorite books are translated works. So I think translated fiction is such a gift to the world. Yes, Ekta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of listening to Daisy, and I was just thinking that since we are reading January in Japan, the hashtag, and had there not been translators, we would have never gotten a chance to read, the Japanese literature and how important they are. And there has been quite a few debates that keep on going about translations. But yeah, I'm sure that, the world needed to read Tomb of Sand, and this is such a brilliant thing. Also, coming to what I wanted to ask you was, during the translation process, what was it, there was a certain, what aspect of the writing kind of revealed itself to you?
All right, wait, say that again.
So I was saying that, during the translation process, what aspect of writing kind of revealed itself to you?
Like writing in general?
Yes, I mean, for Rate Samadhi, yes.
Well, I think translating in general, you're pulling apart, like there's this process of ripping apart before you put it back together. And we translators love metaphors. So, you can imagine, for example, ripping apart a quilt and then repiecing it in a different pattern or something like that. So we have to rip everything apart before we put it back together. And that, like, I can't even really begin to tell you what that reveals about language and how sentences come together and how words come together, because then we rebuild it piece by piece by piece. And so I think that a good translator is somebody who can do anything with language, because we've stripped it all down to these tiny parts and we recombine it. And there's so many extra textual features that we have to think about. So, like, say recently I was translating some short stories that were horror short stories from Urdu, from like the 40s and 50s. And there was kind of horror, but tongue-in-cheek horror, right? And so it made me think a lot about how the horror, like the mood, the rasa, right, that we bring into our translation is extra textual, right? It's not in the text. It's like there are certain conventions and ways, or like ways that you end a sentence to show that something is scary, somebody is about to show up, or something scary is about to happen. So you build suspense. So how do you do that? And there are certain conventions, but there's also just like ways that you have to bring the mood in. And I found myself in that particular exercise. These cats are like going around and around. In that particular exercise, I found myself like adding in these little words and things like that to create suspense. And so what Reid Samadhi has all these different voices, right? We talk a lot about voice when we're talking about writing and like what is the author's voice, but Gitanjali has created all these different voices. There's not just the characters, but there's like different narrative voices. And so you have to recreate voices in the translation. And I think that's another example of that, like what you learn about language. How do you create a voice? How do you like make it feel like a certain kind of person is talking, or is it scary, or is it beautiful, or something like that? And language can give us all of these tools, as long as, again, we're willing to look at the Dhwani and find it on the clouds around the text and around the words.
Absolutely.
Speaking about,
go ahead.
Neeraj.
Go ahead.
Speaking about, you were just mentioning some characters. So, which character do you think you could have? Do you feel like you could have written differently from Tomb of Sand, or you don't feel like that at all?
You mean like?
That's a tough one.
Very tough.
Like if it was my book, how would I have it. Um, well, translators are like, um, we're bound to being faithful to who the characters are and so on like that. But you can grow annoyed with some characters, like either because they're presenting you with a lot of challenges, or just because you don't like translating what they're saying. And I found myself getting annoyed at that narrator that would show up sometimes, that dude, like, who would just sort of suddenly say, I was there. He's like, I always felt like he was spoiling my mood for some reason. But I also changed though. You do so many drafts. So like you should, when you're translating a book, you would do at least 10 drafts. That's the minimum. And so your views change. So you might, like, at one point like one character, and another point you would suddenly so I grew fond of the narrator eventually. I loved translating Rosie. Rosie is really hard. Very hard because she has all these jokes.
Yes.
That are like
Absolutely.
Like zingers, and if you can't get, like, zingers are really hard to do. There was one that I couldn't actually translate, but I left into the English because it was so funny, in my opinion. The one where Ma says, like, जब बड़े आएंगे तब बात करेंगे, or something like that, and she says, what does she say? Like, कौन बड़े, दही बड़े?
Yes. Absolutely, and I think that is one of the things that you see in the text. While I was reading it, and I don't know if that was just an observation or that was purposely done, because the regular characters which are there available in the society and which are kind of very poignant, not very poignant, I mean, you have those characters everywhere, like Ma, like Bade, like the sister,
Biti,
like wife,
Rosie.
Bahu. So all those characters were not given any names until the last chapter.
Under
They
the
were
last.
just kind of called by whatever relationship that they had. Whereas the characters which are not acceptable by the society in general, like Rosie, or the Beti's live-in relationship,
Or all
KK.
the
So
servants all have the whole names. The servants have first and last names too.
so they were kind of given specific names. So was it kind of an intentional way of kind of bringing those characters up, because they need a platform wherein they should be named, they should not be just called in anything, but they should be respected as the just generic relationships that we have in the society. So I was wondering throughout the book that why the book doesn't has any name until you reach the last chapter, wherein some names come in, but all these characters who are not very kind of obvious, or not very acceptable, not very conventional, they are kind of given specific names.
I think in one way that's a convention of women's writing. I've noticed with Hindi and Urdu that because that's a feature of family life in India, that family relationships tend to not be, nobody within the family is spoken of with a given name. They have a nickname, or they have a relationship, a kinship name. And I've noticed that translating women's literature that there are many characters that are never given names, because it's all family relationships. And it's not the thing of a woman being on, a Beti and a Didi and a Bahu, and like, it's not that thing. That's a different issue of women only being referred to by their function within the family. What I'm talking about is that women's literature is often centered in a home domain, and so the men too, everybody that's in the family is only given a family name. And it's very hard for a translator because, you know, the kinship naming system is complicated and you can't force readers to learn it. Like, you know, you guys wouldn't mind, right? Because you know these words.
Yeah.
But say, if I'm publishing it in the UK or
Yes.
the US, like I can't force them to learn the difference between like chachi and mossy and poopy and all these kinds of things, right? So, so it's a huge challenge for a translator. Whereas in men's literature, like there's a lot of outdoor, like men going out and walking around and going to the office, and like there's all these people with actual names, you know, or nicknames. And so I feel like, you know, I like your point about people that need to be recognized. I think that that's an element, and that's an element of, I mean, Gitanjali is interested in everybody.
Yeah.
And interested in all everybody's stories from all different backgrounds. But I also think she's reflecting on the insularity of a family. But if you know, since you've read both the Hindi and English, you'll notice that I do a lot of tricks to keep that, like I use those family names, but I get rid of a lot of stuff, right? So like that whole, you know, a woman can be a dadi or a bahu or a didi or whatever. Like I just choose this one word, like bahu, and I stick with it.
Yes.
And I don't give that person any other Hindi name for a family relationship. And if I must, then I'll just use English. So I'll say like, you know, her sister. Like if the bahu is being somebody's sister, I just say her sister and not bring in a didi or something like that. So so I like clear out most of these words and leave these one word for them, and then it becomes like a name, because especially for Western audiences in English, it's just more conventional to refer to people by a name, right? So so baby becomes, but of course the American readers, I've heard them refer to her as Betty. That kind of backfired.
Translation is tough.
That's a very interesting take. I think I never kind of thought it that way, that, you know, men go out and another layer. See, that's what we were talking about. Every time you read the book, there are so many layers that open up. You really don't know what's happening.
And if I may, if there's a question by Anurag in the comment section, and it's a very interesting question, I thought that I should definitely ask. That we all know that you also paint, but you paint under the name Lapata. So, like, why did you use that name Lapata, which roughly translates into like kind of misplaced or something? And also the question I also wanted to add on to that is like, did you also paint while you were translating Great Samadhi, just like the music question? And because the landscape in the novel changes so rapidly and so fluidly. And did this also inspire you to kind of illustrate both the cover pages?
So Lapata, I chose that. I left my academic job in 2006, and was sort of had no particular plan for what I would do next. I just needed to leave. I felt like it was the wrong thing for me. I started to paint, but like just for myself, like not showing it to people really. And then a friend of mine who ran a blog, a Pakistani friend who ran a blog, asked me to start writing things, because the blog is called Chapati Mystery. And so I said, well, I don't want anyone to know who I am. Like I was just in this very cocooning kind of mood. And he said, well, just make up, you know, you just have a handle and nobody has to know. So I decided to call myself Lapata because I had left academia and people would write to me periodically and say, what happened to you? You disappeared, you know, because I had a job where I was very visible and then I disappeared. And so that's what it meant. It was like it was because I disappeared. So it became my sort of takhallus, my, painting name, and I sign my paintings with that in Urdu. But the painting question, I probably was painting on and off during this, and also my editor asked me to do the cover because I have done a few of my covers, and so I was thinking a lot about that while I was translating. What would the image be? And so the image that's on the English Indian cover is of when from the third section when Ma is in the desert, telling her story. So with the sand flowing around. So that, like most covers are sort of, yes, there it is, illustrative. There you go.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's her on the balcony at Beatty's house.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, 'cause I really know this book, so these are intimate moments like that occur in the book. But then, like, this is the U.S. cover, and I find it really weird that they put her in a sari, right? Because if you'd read the book, you'd know that a huge plot point is that she stops wearing saris.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So she should be wearing like a kaftan.
Yes. Correct.
But I think most people making covers are not going to read the 700-page book to find the right image, I guess.
And
So
there's an Urdu
poignant,
translation
so
also that has come in. No, I was just saying that the Urdu translation has also come in. So you posted about it on Instagram.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I am so amused by it. I wish I could read Urdu. I definitely wanted to read,
yeah. Yeah, my friend Aftab is funny because he's always there for me when I'm having translation problems. He's very, like, totally fluent in Hindi and Urdu. And so, for example, he's always my go-to person if there's a share by Ghalib or something in the text I'm translating site. You can't just, like, Ghalib has so many layers, and, like, I'm not an expert. But I would ask him questions, with some of her trickier writing, and he always just said, "Yeah, I have no idea." Like, you're on your own, basically. Because like Urdu especially is not like people aren't super experimental. It's there's a lot of conventions and so on. So he just found it really mystifying, and he didn't even want to read the book. I had sent him read Samadhi, and then after we won the Booker, then he decided that he wanted to translate it into Urdu. And that was so funny. I was like, now you read it.
Oh my God. And I'm sure it would be delight to the Urdu readers as well, reading this book. It is so exemplary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and also, Daisy, I wanted to ask you that, how do you think, what do you think that how important it is to translate, South Asian literature, because you've been kind of advocating it, you've been talking about it, everywhere, and you're kind of a pioneer in doing that, and you've also done, Tamas by Bhishma Sahni, and that is one epic book that people in India, or the readers of Hindi language generally vouch for, people who read Urdu vouch for, and then you've done such interesting and such incredible translation. That is a difficult book as well, and a very heart-wrenching read. And so what do you think that how important it is that the South Asian literature, because do you think it has not gotten its due, and translators are doing the work? So just wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, absolutely not getting its due. We sort of hope with Sam of Sen, and also there's some new initiatives that have been funded for mentoring young emerging translators, and for encouraging publishers outside of India to publish translations. I make my digs at Indian literature written in English, but I think that's part of the problem is you know, that in publishers outside of India feel like, oh, well, we've got our Indian titles, you know, and there could be somebody that's like Indian American too, and they would put that under the that heading, and so they don't understand what they're missing, you know. I mean, they just, I mean, maybe their minds would be too blown if they really understood how many literatures there are in India, like actively being written in. Like there's so much that they don't know that it would be a kind of upsetting, you know, for these publishers and readers in outside of India who are reading English, reading in English, reading translation is in English. So I feel like it's really important to get the work out there, and just there's just so much richness in Indian literature that that, you know, most of us don't know the half of, because we don't have access to it. And sometimes there are trends, like there's, you know, a Malayalam mini trend, so we're getting access to a bunch of Malayalam literature, and there's more Tamil coming out, more Tamil translations. But there are languages where we don't really hear anything from, you know, like Odia. What are people reading in Odia? I don't know, but there's probably lots of cool stuff, and we haven't read any of it. Yeah.
I hear you are also a pioneer for women's literature and translation. So again, how important is it in today's world, women's literature and women translating?
Well, I sort of started out with this idea that I was going to just read women authors, you know, for a year or something like that. This was a while ago, you know, maybe probably 2016 or something. I thought I'll just read women authors. And then I found that once I started doing that, it was hard to go back to the guys, because there's so much objectification and misogyny that we get used to, and that's all of us, women and men. Like, it's part of, you know, it's part of the patriarchy, it's part of culture, and we just get used to it, and we become desensitized. But then if you just say like, no, I'm not going to read any men for a year, then when you go back to it, you realize, you know, like the boob writing, you know, like how soon will the man describe the woman character's breasts within the moment that she walks in the door, you know, like, is it going to be before her eyes or like what? So, you know,
Right.
I can't take it anymore. You know, there's some authors that don't do that, but like I always loved reading Murakami. Big fan of Murakami, and then he was the one that I tried to read after this year, and like I had never realized how much boob writing he does, and now I can't go back to him, unfortunately. So that was how it started, just kind of as a little, like, it was a personal experiment, and then I decided that I realized that during the course of this time that all of my translations were of men, and I literally hadn't noticed it, and didn't think it was relevant. So I decided, well, I'm going to like even it out, you know, it's kind of a parody thing. Like there's not enough. I don't have translate as many women authors as I have men authors. And so again, then it became hard to go back because the objectification again just like springs up everywhere, and it becomes difficult to tolerate. Now I find it very hard to tolerate. And so I feel like women's voices need to be heard simply just because we are bound by male points of view and male imagery, even in our daily lives, even if we don't read literature. Like it's the male point of view, like in films,
Yeah.
the voyeurism and the objectification.
Yes.
And so it's like women give us such different perspectives and much richer characters, with richer female characters. And what's interesting is that the male characters are also rich. Like, it's not like they just say like, oh well, we don't have to worry about the guys here. Like there seems to be more three-dimensional writing, whereas a lot of male authors don't seem to put too much effort into creating rich female characters that are not there to serve some kind of purpose in a man's life, basically.
So true.
Thank you.
And thank you, Daisy. Thank you so much. I mean, I think we can go on and on and on and on about the book, and we can keep on talking to you. And Daisy, anything that you would want to share with the reading community, the club that we have, to the readers, especially who are there are a lot of beginners, a lot of avid readers, a lot of people who are in love with the craft, in love with literature. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess going off of what I just said, read diversely. Read if you feel like, if go look at your shelf and look at the things that you love and ask yourself how much diversity is there. Is this all white men, or is this all Brahmins, or that kind of thing. And find a way to diversify your reading, because you open your mind. And also, of course, read more translation. However much you read now, double it. Because
That's a good.
because most people don't actually read that much translation. So read more translation, because you'll find your mind really opening up and discovering new things. Yeah.
So Daisy, what are you currently reading?
I'm reading a translation of an Italian woman writer. I can't remember the title right now, but because I just got it for Christmas. But it's set in the 1950s in Rome, and it's the story of a woman's life, and I'm really excited about it.
Wow.
I'll write in the title and on your website when I get off.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. And if we may also ask, what are you currently working on? The next project.
Hamara Sheher was Paris, Our City That Year by Gitanjali Shri. I am obsessively working on right now, and it hopefully will be out late this year.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Can't wait.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah. And it's 25 years old, and it's about us, basically the aftermath of the demolition of a mosque.
Okay.
There's sort of a lot of plausible deniability in the title, right? Hamara Sheher, it doesn't say what city.
Yes.
Was Paris that year, so
Hamara
it's a
Sheher
time
us Baras.
much like 1992, and a city much like a UP city.
Yes.
Or and then there's rioting, and there's three characters. There's a couple where the wife is Hindu and the husband is Muslim, and then his colleague, he's an academic, and so there's two colleagues, a Hindu and a Muslim. They all live in the same house, and she's a writer. Shruti is the main woman character. So they're all writers in some way or another, and they feel like they have to write about what's happening. Everybody's being pulled apart because of these riots and because of the demolition of the mosque, and they feel like they should be writing, but none of them can find a way to write. Like they're failing completely. And so the narrator is this woman who says she doesn't know anything and she has no qualifications, But since these people are falling down on the job, she's going to just write down everything that happens. So she's like, she says, "My knuckle karti ho," she's just like copying it all down. And she's not going to sort through it, and she's not going to analyze it. She's just going to record it. Yeah. And so it's a very interesting book, I think. Will probably spark some debate.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
And then we will have you again to discuss that book with us.
The aftermath of the debate. And if I may, one very quick question, if I can ask, is there anything you are working yourself? I mean, your own writing.
Well, yeah, I want to, and I'm trying to write a book about translation.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
I can talk to you all day.
Yeah. But I decided I wrote a bunch of it, and then I decided I needed to get this translation done because there are contracts and things like that. But it's like very odd and unconventional, this book about translation. So I'm just kind of feeling my way along and seeing where it will take me.
Oh my God,
Wow.
can't wait for this.
Oh God.
Well, yeah, I have readers.
Yeah,
Your fans,
absolutely.
your fans.
Fans. So Daisy, just wanted to ask you, do you have the book with you right now? If you could read something for us.
Oh, Tomb of Sand? Yes, it's right here.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
We also.
Yeah, I have bookmarks in here. And so let me see what they from readings that I've done. And I'm going to see what there was. Okay, this is a funny one. I like to read this one. Okay.
Sure.
This is when Ma first disappears, right?
Okay.
And they can't believe it, right? And so Bade and Sushila are trying to find her, even though she's obviously not in the room, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are umpteen methods for searching for a missing object in a quilt. One searches for a missing person in much the same way. One method is to tap the quilt, twist it like it's dough that's been kneaded, and then pat it gently. Here's another. You think, this isn't dough, it's a tent. And you raise and lower the corners furiously and run your hand around inside, trying to grab the missing object or person. And when you don't feel anything, you yourself race in behind your hand, squeezing yourself in this way and sticking your head out that way. And you blink wide-eyed as though emerging from underwater, panting, and your eyes flare and contract like a pair of nostrils. A third. The quilt suddenly seems like a carpet, and you pick up all the bedding and fling it down again as though Ma might fall from it separately, as though she were a grasshopper stuck inside. Then you understand that the hidden item could take on any form and could also change its size, at which point all places and things hold possibilities for you. As the search deepens, the senses grow intemperate. So you imagine her taking the form of a silver toe ring, and you shake out the sheet like a delicate dupatta. You imagine her as a letter and feel beneath the pillow and under the mattress. A kitten! You poke at imaginary bundles here and there on the quilt so it won't slip from your hands and run away. If an elephant, you quickly fling the quilt in the air, then jump away so it won't go mad and attack you. If you imagine her as a firecracker, you light the matches and jump so they don't explode right above you. The limits of the imagination have yet to be discovered. If you cross one limit, another will arise. Every shape takes form in the imagination, and Bade continued his search for Ma in ever new places. He even twisted the cup off the thermos, pulled off the top, and peered inside. He also looked behind the photo of his father and inside the little box of cardamom pods, under the bed, on the windowsill, inside the Elmira. He opened the drawers, peeked in the toilet bowl, and each time Sushila's weeping broke out afresh. Where is Mataji? She's not here. But when Sushila picked up the mattress to peek beneath it, he scoffed. Are you mad? No, I just thought, she wept quietly. Thought what? He scolded. That maybe Mataji had wrapped herself up in the quilt by accident, somehow. Or you could put it like this, that none among these was the shape of Mataji, Amma, Maji, elderly Dadi, Granny Chill, but rather the shapes of the senses taking leave, like the flight of a dove. And it can also be said that whatever thing takes the form of a dove is the most imaginative of all, as is the dexterous magician who can twirl his wand and turn wood into a snake, or something big into something small, and bring the dead alive, and bear the prone aloft, and render the visible invisible.
Wow.
Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
And I just wanted to say I was reminded when I read the phrase Granny Chill, that's Sid, right?
Yeah.
So when we were in London for the book, her nephew showed up and he said, "Hi, I'm Sid." And I said, "Oh my God." Because he was exactly the same, like literally exactly the same as the character. And he was like, "I'm so excited about this nomination and everything." And I said, "Oh, have you read the book?" And he's like, "Oh, it's kind of long." And because you're a character in the book, so you understand.
You're a character in the book. Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I just wanted to leave you with that little fun fact.
Thank you so much,
So much
Daisy.
for
Everyone
that.
else is made
Thank
up.
you.
Sid is real.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed as much as we did, and
Yes,
so glad to have
absolutely.
you here.
Yes.
Thank you so much from
Thanks
Reader
for
Kitab.
inviting me. Yes.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Namaste.